Okay, so let's look at the text 5 years, and I'll just show myself reacting. So 5 years, my guess was maybe it's connected with Stalin, some type of period. They've divided it up for some particular purpose. So 5 years already, very short sentence to begin with. This makes it a story type of thing. Today was his 5th birthday. Yep, it is a story about the past. He very much doubt anyone remembered. There would be no cake, no watch, no letter of appreciation. Okay, a bit strange for a birthday, letter of appreciation. For him as a record, he had not managed to survive 5 years in any other job. Okay, it's about jobs. Wow, he couldn't survive. It sounds like it's pretty difficult. Okay, he's working in the insurance industry. Sounds pretty boring. Back and forth between Haywards Heath and London. 5 years of urban existence. So it sounds like he needs to travel quite a bit. He's only surviving and he has to travel. So this guy's probably not that experienced or good at what he's doing. Okay, Stalin had 5 years plans, good unit of time for planning. 5 years, I 100% agree, it's a good unit of time for planning. For example, in job interviews, they often say, where do you think you'll be in 5 years? So it's not just Stalin, this 5 years does seem to be a typical way of dividing up time. Here, according to the text, possibly 10% of a long working life, which kind of makes sense, 10%, we like that kind of thing. Okay, before he started writing insurance, did he have a plan? Probably not, most people don't. Here it says he wasn't sure. 5 years ago, he was still in his early 20s, a mere youth, I agree, early 20s is mere youth. He smiled at the foolishness of his own thought. Still, at the end of the year after next, he would be 30. Is that when middle age begins? So, this is probably a bit of an older text. Middle age beginning at 30. I don't think we'd ever ask ourselves the questions nowadays. So that's quite interesting, the idea that at some stage 30 was your middle age. Now I'd say it's probably 45 or 50, in Australia at least. 7:15 a.m. Okay, this is interesting. The first paragraph began with 5 years already, full stop. It's not a real sentence, there's no verb, and it's very short and it's a time period. And here we have 7:15 a.m. full stop. So the text is being divided according to time periods. So he's brought it from the general 5-year time period to a very specific time. So I'd expect to see some type of specific description of the specific time. It was already sunny and warm as he stepped off the bus. There you go. Why are they describing this one specific thing? Made his way into the station. It's going to be hot, he said, which for me is funny. I'm from Sydney. London doesn't get hot. Okay, the man who always caught the same train as him. Yeah, you can really feel that this is from a little while ago. The guy knows and talks with the man who catches the same train. From my experience in Sydney, we don't really talk with each other much on the train, even if you recognise a person who gets it at the same time as you. So here we go. They always waited at the exact same spot halfway along the platform for 5 years. They didn't even know each other's names. Okay, so that is a bit more typical. In Sydney, maybe you would talk with someone, but that's also typical. You wouldn't know their names. Sometime later, he stared out the window. So again, sometime later, we can see the text is divided according to time. He stared out the window. He always did on this section of the journey as the train passed through some gorgeous English countryside south of Gatwick Airport. Yeah, my trip to work in Sydney was quite nice. I wouldn't say it was gorgeous in, well, Australian countryside. But there were some interesting things. The airport certainly wouldn't be very interesting to go past. Not many things around the airport. It's quite bare in Sydney. There were meadows, proper trees, and his favourite place was when they passed a mysterious pond. Yeah, it's very much countryside. So perhaps Gatwick Airport now doesn't have the same extent of greenery. Afterwards, again the time expression, he reflected that it was the moment the train passed this lake that 5 years came to an end. Okay, that's why they've got the specific story for the specific train trip. It marks the end of the 5 years. So that's interesting that the train passed this lake, bang, that's it, that's the 5 years. So he measures the time according to what he sees out the window. Very interesting. As a commuter, yeah, sometimes I would do that. For example, when I was getting on the ferry and when I would see the Sydney Harbour and the Opera House, that was a sign of a particular time. Half an hour later, as he crossed Victoria Station to catch the tube, okay, so he's got to get the train into the city, he's got to catch the tube, so it's like he's coming from Leningradsky Oblast or something. The thought had really taken hold. He struggled to concentrate on his work, and the supervisor asked him if there was a problem. He didn't answer. So, what's this problem that we've got? 5 years came to an end. I don't know, it sounded like he was happy about this. He'd managed to survive. But that afternoon, he handwrote a letter of resignation. It was all a bit sad. In 5 years, he never made any real friends. Okay, very, very strange. He began with saying he'd managed to survive, and here he's saying he wrote his letter of resignation. So an interesting story, I think. I certainly didn't expect that ending when he was so happy. For him it was a record at the beginning, and then at the end he was a bit sad because he wrote his letter of resignation. So obviously in 5 years he'd never made any real friends. Perhaps he thought that this would be a wonderful thing, surviving in a job for 5 years, and when he managed to do it he got disappointed in the result. It wasn't as special as what he thought it would be. I remember watching a film, an American film about this. It had George Clooney in it, and he was traveling around America once again on insurance. Very interesting. And he had to take a lot of flights, and he was really looking forward to the day where he would get, I think, 10,000 miles or maybe more, or 10,000, or I'm not sure, like a very large amount of flights, and he would receive some sort of recognition from the airline that he'd been flying. And when this day came and finally he got the recognition, he realized it was nothing special. So perhaps that's the idea of this story. Developing the idea that people can look into the future, plan to achieve something thinking it's something great, but when they get to it and they've achieved it, it doesn't really represent that much.